need patience in all areas of life. You need patience when you're on the interstate and an 18-wheeler pulls over in front of you and slings a rock on your windshield. You need patience, don't you? Or you need patience when you're sitting there at a red light and the lady in front of you is talking on her cell phone and doing her makeup at the same time. And she realizes what she's done about the time that the light turns yellow, and then she goes through the intersection, and then you're left there to wait again, don't you? You need patience. You need patience when you get out on the drive and it's a par 5 and you're about to tee off and you realize that your kids have taken your Big Bertha driver and they've used it as a hammer. You need some patience, don't you? Well, everywhere we turn, we need patience. Patience is so important. We've been in this study of the fruit of the Spirit over the last few weeks. We've been talking about peace, joy, love, and today from Galatians 5:22, patience. Patience. How can we develop patience in an impatient world? How can we develop patience in an impatient world? And, you know, we see impatience everywhere. We feel it when we want to watch an episode on television. And we have subscriptions to things like Hulu or Amazon Prime or Netflix. And we watch one show and we can't wait until the next week to watch the next show. So we go on what they call a binge watching spree. And so we watch an entire season in one evening. Binge watching. Do we have any binge watchers here today? Oh, I can't wait. I got to watch it now. What are they going to do? I'm a binge watcher. Well, I can be impatient. And I remember as Gina and I were preparing to get married, we went on a mission trip to Eastern Europe 3 weeks before the wedding. I don't recommend that, by the way. Don't do that. But 3 weeks before the wedding, we're over there in Eastern Ukraine. We've been about 10 days in the Ukrainian villages. And, you know, you can only eat so much borscht, okay? And so we got back to the capital city of Kiev, and we were craving some American food, and the best we could come up with was Mickey D's. Yeah, that was the best. I can't stand McDonald's, but you know, in this moment, Mickey D's was sounding really good. And so we go to the subway station, and we're gonna ride this, you know, the subway over to this Mickey D's, and the subway only comes every 25 minutes. This one that we got to take. So we're in this massive station. It's like Grand Central Station for Kiev, Ukraine. You know, you're like kind of walking like this, and I've got Gina with me, and we're going to go. And of course, nobody speaks English, and all the signs are in Russian. And I mean, it's a different place. And I looked down at my watch, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to miss the train. And I said, Gina, we got to go. And all of a sudden, I started running through the subway station. I mean, I was like Monte Ball running for a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? I was running. I did a spin move like this. And then I did a stiff arm with one guy. I think I hurdled an old lady, you know. I was moving. I got to get on the train. And about the time I was about to jump on this train, I hear this voice, Ryan! And I look back and I see my fiance, now my wife, Gina. She's like jumping up and down like, wait! There's people everywhere. She can't get through. You know, subways move fast. I mean, they basically stop and the doors open. It's like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. They shut and you're off. You don't save seats for people on the subway. And I hadn't thought about that in my impatience. And so in that moment, I made a very quick decision to wait, to be patient, to not run on over to McDonald's and leave my wife there in the train station. She said to me this week, Ryan, what would you have done if I had been nabbed by the Russian mob? I said, oh, I would have gone all Liam Neeson, and I would have rescued you. You're in good hands. Sometimes patience gets the best of us, doesn't it? We start running so fast and moving so quickly that we leave everybody else behind. We got to be patient. The Bible has so much to say to us about patience. In fact, in Galatians 5:22, when the Bible lists the fruit of the Spirit, it tells us about patience. And really the word in the language of the New Testament for patience is a word that means literally to be long fused. A person who is patient has a long fuse. A person who is impatient has a short fuse. And we've all gone pop, 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 pop before because we were impatient. But patience is one with a long fuse. And in Genesis 16, we find one of the great examples in the Old Testament about patience. It's a story of Abram and his wife Sarah. Her name's Sarai, actually, in chapter 16, but both their names are going to be changed to Abraham and Sarah in the coming chapters. And we find in this situation that Abram has been promised he's going to have the child of promise, a child named Isaac. And yet, it's been 10 years. And furthermore, Abraham is now, he's 85 years old. His wife is 75 years old. How many of you know you get kind of discouraged about having kids if you haven't had one at 85, right? If your wife's gone through menopause and you don't have any babies, it's not likely. But yet God's given them a promise. If you read Genesis 15, God said, you're going to have a child of promise. You're going to have a son. And yet it's not working. It's not happening. So, what are we going to do? And Sarah and Abraham, they get a little impatient, don't they? Some of you know this story. Because at the heart of impatience is a lack of trust of God. You see, when you trust God, you will be patient. When you're not sure if God's going to come through, then that's when we start tinkering around and doing a little of this and doing a little of that, kind of coming up with our own plan. That's when we get in trouble. But when we trust in God, we will be patient. And look at these three things today from this story in Genesis 16, because we can have patience, first of all, by doing God's things God's way. God's things, God's way. God has an order. God has a way. God has a plan. And in Genesis 16, Sarah gets nervous and she comes up with her own plan. Look at this. Now, Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. And so she said to Abraham, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her. And Abraham agreed to what Sarah said. So, I'm not having a baby, so let's see what we can do. By the way, this servant, Hagar, had been picked up in Egypt. And God never told Abraham and Sarah to go to Egypt, if you read a few chapters before, but they went anyway. Sometimes when we have sin in our lives, it can snowball into other sin, and then other sin, and other sin, and other sin. But when we live a life of righteousness, many times that righteousness will begin to snowball and will set us up to be righteous and to live righteous and to make right decisions. And so here we see that Hagar wasn't supposed to be in the picture in the first place, but now we can't have a baby. And so what are we going to do? Well, we got Hagar over here, and Sarah goes and she says, Abraham, what do you think about my idea? And I just imagine, the look on Abraham's face. Abraham is 85 years old. He's very wealthy. And we're going to see in this story, just a minute, Abraham is going to kind of work the deal. Hagar is going to work the deal. Sarah's going to work the deal. Now, Sarah's working the deal because she can't have a baby, and she wants a baby, and it doesn't matter how we get it. We're going to have a baby. And then Abraham's like, You want me to have relations with Hagar? He's thinking about this. He's like, well, she's 19. She's tall. She's thin. Sarah's kind of old, anyway. She's from Egypt. She's got a nice tan, It's like, twist my arm, Sarah. I'll take one for the team, Yeah, I'll take one for the team. Brilliant, honey. Where did you come up with such a great idea? Abraham's like, this is good for me. Sarah's thinking, this is good for me. And then Hagar's been a servant. Now she's going to be elevated as a wife, and she's going to be married to the rich guy. She's like, this life's looking up for me. I got a promotion. I was a servant. Now I'm a wife. So they're all kind of working the deal. They're all kind of selfishly trying to get their own agenda, so to speak. And they're tweaking God's word. Sometimes we look at our lives and things aren't working out like they're supposed to, so we start tweaking God's word. Did God really say that? Did God really say this? Should I really do this over there? We start kind of tweaking. It's kind of the same thing, but it's got a little different spin on it. Sometimes we're tweaking God's word rather than responding to God's word. And Sarah and Hagar and Abraham, they're all looking for opportunities here. And Abraham's like, man, I will take one for the team on this one. But a lot of times we live in the moment, but we don't think about the outcomes. See, I don't think Abraham ever sat down and thought about this. Now, if this plan really works, what's going to happen? I'm not sure that Sarah realized what it would be like for Hagar to have a baby and for her to not have a baby. And we're going to see this unfold in the next few verses. But sometimes we make decisions and we make choices and we don't think about the outcomes. You know, we're just kind of in the moment making decisions, and we just kind of hope for the best. But then when the consequences show up, then we're surprised. And this thing's about to go south really, really quick. About to go south. Our goal should always be to honor God and not to succeed in our plans. See, when we honor God first, then we will succeed in our plans. But if we elevate succeeding in our plans above honoring God, and we see God as merely a means to an end, then we will be confused. Don't do it. So Sarah is encouraging Abram to sin. Abram commits adultery. Hagar takes advantage of the situation. Now she's married to the old rich guy. It kind of reminds me of a few years ago. Do you guys remember Anna Nicole Smith? You guys remember her? She's kind of hard to forget about. Yeah. She was like an actress and like a model, and I think she did some other stuff too. And she was 26 years old, and then she married that old oil tycoon guy who was 89 years old, and he was a billionaire in the oil industry. The guy's name was J. Howard Marshall. And so the 89-year-old is married to the 26-year-old, then he dies, and then she claims his whole estate. It's kind of like that. Okay, work with me a little bit this morning, okay? This sounds like an episode of Maury Povich, doesn't it? This is like Jerry Springer all over again. I can see Jerry. He got on his couch. He's got Abraham. He's got Hagar, and he's got Sarah, and he's like telling me about it. Anyway, we got to do God's things in God's way. God has an order. God has a plan. And listen, if you're going to do God's things in God's way, you got to have a backbone. Because you got to be saying no to the things that are not the plan of God so you can say yes to the things that are the plan of God. You got to have a backbone. And so sometimes we say, well, you know what? No Christian guys are asking me out. So I want to get married, so I'll just marry this other guy over here. He's not a Christian. You know, what difference does it make? You know, God's not working things out. You know, it's not happening like it's supposed to. Sometimes I'll talk to some of our singles in our church, and they'll be like, oh, I got a new boyfriend or I got a new girlfriend. And I'm like, well, are they a Christian? And then sometimes people pause, and they're like, I think so, you know. They don't wear a yarmulke, you know. I think he's a Christian, you know, kind of thing. You know, listen, if you have to pause and think about it, then you've already answered the question. You know, don't do that. You want to be with somebody who ignites your faith, not somebody who tolerates your faith. See, a lot of people today, they start dating around and they're like, yeah, I can marry him or marry her, and they're okay if I go to church, you know, it's no big deal. Listen, the biblical order, what God wants is for you to be with somebody who's encouraging your faith, somebody who challenges you. When you're around them, they raise your game. You know, you want to love God more. You want to be more passionate about your relationship with Jesus. You don't want somebody that's just kind of like, okay, whatever. Don't do that. Be patient. Let God open the door. Be patient. Sometimes we think, well, I'm married. My spouse isn't meeting my needs. They're driving me crazy. This person is different from the person that I married. I never married that person. I never married this person. I want to leave. Listen, be patient. Be patient. God has an order. Don't get ahead of God. Let God work. Let God work. I have seen people get divorces, and then we're trying to help them here at the church and the counselor's office to reconcile the marriage, and somebody gets impatient and they go off and get with somebody else and marry somebody else, and the relationship was about to be restored. Somebody got impatient. Don't do it. Don't give up. Don't give up on your marriage today. Don't give up on your family. Let God work. Let God work. The Bible says we should be patient in the home. I believe the home is the most challenging place to be patient. Colossians 3, the apostle said, husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Men, you got to be patient with your wife. You can't speak harshly to your wife and expect that you're going to have a great marriage. Okay? Don't be harsh. Be patient. See, patience is not when you don't get irritated. Patience is when you get irritated, but you don't lash out. That's what patience is. Patience is when you have some self-control and you can hold back even though you may feel a certain way in the moment. Be patient. And then in verse 20 it says, children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. Okay, that's for all the teenagers here today. Read that one. Everybody was like, thanks, Pastor Ryan. It is in the Word. It is in the Word. I recommend it. Verse 21, fathers, do not aggravate your children or they will become discouraged. You know, sometimes as a parent, you can be really hard on your kids. And the Bible says they'll get discouraged. A lot of kids today are discouraged because parents are not edifying and building kids up. They're lashing out in impatience, and it's causing pain in the home. Be patient. Be patient. The kids will push your buttons more than anybody. Got to be patient. And if you really want to get patient, get some kids. All right, that'll change everything. Kids will make you be patient. Kids don't move at the pace that they're supposed to, right? I'm learning that. I'm speaking from some experience. So we got to do God's will in God's way. Now here's the second thing. If you're going to be patient, you got to do God's things in God's time. Okay? There's a way to do things, and it's not Hagar. A lot of times people take the path of Hagar and they miss the plan of God. Are you on the path of Hagar? There's a way to do things, but there is a time to do things. And you can do the right thing in the wrong time. Did you know that? You can do the right thing in the wrong timing. It's a mess. And Abram and Sarah, they got the wrong time. Look at verse 3. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. So now he's got two wives. We got sister wives right here. Sister wives never works. Every time it's mentioned in the Bible, there's always fighting and conflict. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. And then Sarah said to Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. Now wait a second, it was her idea and now she's blaming Abraham. You know, a lot of times we blame other people for our sin. We don't take responsibility. It's her fault. It's his fault. You made me do it. And Abram's thinking, well, wait a second. I agreed to it, but it was your idea. She said, you are responsible for the wrong that I'm suffering, and I put my servant in your arms, and now she knows that she's pregnant, and she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Boy, she's getting self-righteous right there. Verse 6, your servant is in your hands, Abram said. Do with her whatever you think is best. And Sarai mistreated Hagar, and so she fled from her. So now you got two women, they're fighting. And Hagar is holding it over the head of Sarah that she's the one that's pregnant and that Sarah is not. And Sarah is mistreating her because she's jealous, and these women are going at it. It's like a big cat fight. Abram's like in the middle. He's like, man, I don't know what to tell either side. And so finally he just says, well, just do whatever you want to do, Sarah. And Hagar runs off into the desert, and she would have died in the desert, except an angel rescued her and Ishmael, her son, which is another chapter on another day. But we have two contentious women. It was the wrong time. Be patient. Do the right things the right way in the right time. God will bless you. When you do that, there's going to be a huge mess that's going down here. Now, back earlier in the book of Genesis, the Bible says that God made a woman and a man to come together as one flesh. And that's what happens in marriage. A husband and a wife come together in one flesh. But listen, when you got three people, that's crowded, okay? Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, it's not working. It's not working. And God has a time for everything. Now, when I was 18 years old, I knew that God was calling me to be a pastor. I believed that I would preach and be a pastor, be a church leader. That's all I ever wanted to do. And that's all I've ever focused on professionally, or whatever you want to call it, as an adult. That's all I've ever thought about. But you know, God had a time. Had I started Edge Church at the age of 18, some of you think this church is kind of crazy now. You can't imagine what it would be like if we had started this church when I was 18. I had to go through a process. I had to go through some training. You know, I was an associate pastor for about, 9 or 10 years. And then I had to, get some education. I got a master's degree, and I started my doctoral work. And, God there's a time for everything. Sometimes you see where God is taking you, but that doesn't mean that you're supposed to go there right now. Sometimes you see where God's taking you, and it's going to be the next few years, or the next, maybe even the next decade, something like that. Be patient with the time. God's preparing you. Paul went to the Arabian desert for 3 years after his conversion, just to spend time with God, to get ready to be a missionary. Moses didn't liberate the people of Israel from Egypt till he was 80 years old. 80. Jesus didn't start his public ministry till he was 30. There is a time, there is an order for everything. And when we get ahead of God's timing, we create all kinds of messes in our lives, just like Hagar and just like Sarah we're starting to see there. And God has a time in relationships. A lot of relationships struggle because when people start dating, they put the sexual part of the relationship first, and then that starts really quick, and then the other parts of the relationship don't mature and grow. And so we have people today, many people that are married, that know how to meet each other's needs physically, but they don't know how to communicate. People don't know how to solve problems. People don't know how to agree on money. They don't agree on parenting, because the relationship started here, and it wasn't God's timing. God says there's an order. Start here. Follow my plan for your life. You can't get to know somebody in just a few weeks. I mean, if you're going to spend your life with somebody, it takes a season. It takes some time to get there. Don't get in a hurry. Wait for God. Don't get in a hurry. Do God's things in God's way, in God's time, and you know what? You'll be blessed. You will be blessed. A lot of people today going into debt because we can't be patient. I got to have the car. I got to have the house. I got to have the flat screen TV today. And a lot of times what we do is we end up stressing so much about how am I going to pay for that, we can't even enjoy all the stuff that we've got. Be patient. You don't have to have everything. Don't compare yourself to everybody else on your street. Sometimes we look at our life compared to people we went to college with, or people that we know, or people that are about our age, or about the same stage of life, or they got kids about our kids' age or whatever. And we think, well, they're getting a little ahead of us, and, man, I got to kind of catch up. Listen, the timing of God in every person's life is different. It's never the same. It's never the same. And you will be a frustrated person if you're always trying to follow the pattern and the pace of everybody else. Our goal should be to say, what does God want for my life? What's the time for my life? I was thinking this week about an experience I had a few years ago. This was right before I got back from the mission trip to Ukraine, okay, where I was running through the subway. And I just started dating Gina. Just started talking. We just started kind of hanging out, visiting, talking a little bit. And there was this dream job that came available. And I was like, I got to have that job. That's the greatest job ever. It was a job at a church. The church was in Austin, Texas, and it was a university pastor position, and that's what I wanted to do. You know, I had experience. I was serving at another church, doing a similar role, but now this was the largest campus in the United States. It was a huge church, a great location, lots of resources and a lot of money the church had a lot of influence. This was a great opportunity for somebody. And I was like, I think I qualify for that job. And I don't mean that in a prideful way, but I just looked at my credentials and I looked at the requirements of the job and I was like, I'm a good fit for this. I come from this kind of church and I know some people there and this is kind of what they're doing. This is kind of where I'm from. This is a good fit. So I told Gina, I said, Gina, I think I'm going to interview for this job. And my friends have told me they think I got a great chance to get this job. Well, I sent my resume in and guess what? I never heard from the church. I was so frustrated. I was like, man, I think God has spoken to me about this. And, you know, I can't believe they didn't even interview me. I was kind of mad about it. I was like, oh, come on, man, give me a break. You know, what's the deal? And, you know, we went on with our life. And Gina and I started dating. We got engaged. I knocked out about 30 hours of master's work in the next year. And then about 14 months later, guess who called? I got a call from the church that I felt like I was called to serve in. They called me over a year later. And I thought, well, what's wrong with you guys? You know, they're kind of on the slow pace, you know, around here. They said, no, we're not on the slow pace. We actually hired somebody from within, just somebody that was already on our staff, but that didn't work out. And now we need to bring somebody else in, and we really want to talk to you, Ryan. And to make a long story short, in the next 3 months, I was packing my stuff up, moving to Austin, Texas, and we had 5 of the most fruitful years of ministry anybody could ever have. It was incredible. God was there. God did amazing things in our church and our ministry, and I'm thankful for that. But you know what? I almost got ahead of God. And then I was thinking about that, and I realized that had I moved a year before, I might not have married my wife. Because, see, we just started dating. I wouldn't have had a chance to finish my master's degree like I did. God knew what needed to happen. God says, be patient. Just let God open some doors. Don't get in such a hurry. Don't get ahead of what God is doing in your life. Don't do it. God has a time. God has a time for everything. So we do God's things in God's time. Here's the third thing. Do God's things in God's power. That is, we should live by faith. There are things that you can work a lifetime to do that God can do more in an instant. You could commit your whole life to reach this goal, and you'll fall short of what God can do if he just snapped his fingers. We need the power of God in our life. And listen, when you follow the plan of God and the timing of God, you will find the power of God. That's what we need. We need God's power. Look at this. Now, the Lord was gracious to Sarah. And by the way, I fast forwarded to chapter 21. The Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. You ought to underline that phrase, the Lord was gracious to Sarah. You see, Sarah had screwed up. She had come up with this crazy plan. She had caused this calamity, this problem, but God was still gracious to her. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? When we get off on this plan over here, you know, we start kind of coming up with our own plan, God is still gracious to us. I am so glad God is gracious to us, even when we get off on our own direction. And then look at this in verse 2. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the very time that God promised him. At the very time God promised him. God is not early. God is not late. God is always on time. It was right when God said. And then verse 3, Abraham gave his name Isaac to the son born to him. And when the son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. So now the fulfillment of the promise has come. Now God told Abraham when he was 75, you're going to have a son. He didn't get there till he was 100. I'm sure those 25 years felt like an eternity. That probably felt like 100 years. But God delivered on exactly what God said was going to happen. And see, God's power showed up. I mean, it was only God's power that could cause Abraham and Sarah to conceive. You know, that's the kind of life that I want to live. That's the kind of life I know many of us in this room want to live. A life that we look around and we're like, man, I can't explain this. I don't know how to put this into words, but such and such happened. And the only thing we can do is look up and say, that is the power of God. That's the power of God. That's one of the greatest compliments to Edge Church. People say, how could Edge Church be meeting in Pastor Ryan's living room 5 years ago, and now we have one of the fastest growing churches in this region? How can that happen? It's the power of God. God is doing something in us that we can't always explain. We can't put it into words. We don't even need to try. We don't even need to worry with that. It's just all about Him. And listen, when we begin to live by faith and to trust in the promises and the plans of God, then that will unleash the power of God in our life. So God was gracious to Sarah. He was gracious to Abraham. But sometimes we get impatient, don't we? And we try to force things. Our goal is to reach our objective, not to honor God. And we wonder, why is there such a mess? God gets the glory. I want to encourage you today. I don't know what stage of life that you're in, but I just want to encourage you to enjoy where you are. It's always easier to look around and go, man, I wish I had this, or I wish I was older, or I wish I was younger, or I wish I had this going on. God has given you some blessings in your life. And for every person, it's a little different. Enjoy where you are. Enjoy where you are. But to do so, we need the fruit of the Holy Spirit in our lives, don't we? It's peace, it's joy, it's love, and it's patience. We need some patience, don't we? So let's just keep raising our kids and telling them the things of God, and let's be patient. Even when they may be off the path a little bit. You be patient, Mom and Dad, and just keep showing up at work and doing your best, because I know there's some people that got the promotion and maybe you deserved it more. But listen, you just be patient. You just be patient. You let God work, and you just keep looking for that man or woman of God. I know you're frustrated. I know it isn't working out all in your timetable. But listen, you be patient, and you let God work, and you let God do His things in His ways, in His time, and you know what? Then you'll find His power in your life. Amen? Amen.